Welcome to the Just Jake podcast. I'm Jake Gutierrez, and this is my podcast, episode 1. I have my brothers in studio, Derek Gutierrez, Dusty Gutierrez. I think I'll just open up with a little discussion about what this podcast is going to consist of. Many people know me from my work at 810 WHB and producing a variety of shows there. They've given me an opportunity to branch out, and so here I am doing my own podcast, like it or not. What this podcast will probably evolve through the time being is targeted at overall health and wellness, physically, mentally, spiritually. I think there's an epidemic in this world consisting of all three of those entities and individuals' health in those arenas. So if I can add some positivity to this atmosphere of wellness, then this is my go at it. I have a mission statement every morning that I wake up saying that, God, open up my heart, open up my mind, reach in and touch my soul so I can be of maximum service to you, God, and the men, women, and children I go about today. And so this is an extension of me adding to that purpose. So my podcast, the Just Jake podcast, will consist of me and my experiences, because I don't have any authority in this world other than the authority over myself. And so what this will be is me sharing my experience, my strength, my hope, through my journey of this life and my experiences in this life, positive and negative, which is all perception, right? My perception in this world, which is life. So I will never be preaching on this podcast. I won't ever be telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing. What I will be doing is saying, hey, this is how I've lived my life. This has worked for me. And you're going to hear a lot about my journey. Some people might know a little bit about it. Some people might know a lot about it, and some people might know nothing about it. So with that in mind, I will be aware of how I share my experience and hope and my journey through this life. And so that's why I brought two guys who have witnessed my journey in this life, probably closer than any other two humans on this planet. They've lived through the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so welcome, boys, to my podcast. It's kind of fun to say.
Good to be here. Thanks,
Yeah.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
Honored to be here with you.
We'll see about that. So I'll just take a moment, introduce yourselves, just kind of tell the world what you like to do. You can share what you do for a living if you want. It's open form. If there's something that you don't want to talk about when we get there, say, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Rather not go that direction, because I've kind of put out an outline of the direction I kind of want to push this towards. But before you guys introduce yourselves, maybe I'll just lay out my vision for what the next hour, maybe two, whatever, maybe even 20 minutes if it sucks. I have always, as I've progressed through, media and doing interviews and being part of interviews, I would, I think that the ability to watch my friends like Stephen St. John be able to sit down with their father and have an interview and an open dialogue, that's something that was taken from us, right, wrong, or indifferent. And our parents, I'd like to honor them today because we're not here without them. And so that's why I think it's awesome that I get to kick off this podcast with you two and kind of honor mom and dad, and then kind of tell my origin story, so to speak, how we got here, how I got here, luckily, because I think witnessing the past 44 years, there's maybe a little bit of doubt, certainly in my mind. I don't know. I can't speak for you two that I would be 44 at some point in time. It's kind of funny.
Yes.
So, so that's kind of my vision. You know, let's honor Mom and Dad, Bob and Debbie Gutierrez, two wonderful people. In my heart, you know, they live on, but they were very humble people. They instilled principles in me that I wasn't always able to carry on through my actions while they were here, but they put them there so I can live by them today. You know, and I'm sure there's a lot of prayers that went out for me during their human life that are now being answered today. So with that said, Derek, why don't you take the first few moments to introduce yourself and just tell us what you're all about.
Well, yeah, Derek Gutierrez, your younger brother and the youngest of the three of us. You know, I'm 42, so 2 years younger than you, and grew up very close to you. So before, you know, we get into this, you know, you talk about Mom and Dad. I said to you yesterday, I was like, hey, really excited that Dusty and I get to be your first guests on your podcast. And you looked at me and you said, well, don't take this personally, but Mom and Dad would have been the first two guests, and they're here.
Sure.
They're proud of where you've come, and this is awesome. So congrats, dude, that you're taking this step and using your voice in a platform because, you know, as we go through the conversations, I'm sitting here and I'm who I am today because of both of you, obviously our parents, but I've been shaped a lot by you just because of our closeness. Siblings obviously have that effect on each other. So, I live in Southern California. I live in San Clemente. I'm engaged to an incredible woman, Stephanie. We have an integrated family. I have a 9-year-old boy, Gavin, light of my life, and then a 13-year-old that's you know, from a prior relationship with Steph. So we have an integrated family, and we have another on the way. So there's 3 of us boys sitting here. Dusty, you'll obviously talk through your family. You have 4 girls, but I'm going to be a girl dad here pretty soon too. So
welcome to the club.
Yeah, thrilled about that. But no, Jake, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk. I'm excited to share. I'm excited to listen. I'm excited to see where this goes. And this is, I think, a great start to the journey that Just Jake will take listeners and guests on because, you know, your perspective is one that I've lived a lot of places, whether growing up in Kansas City and going to Marquette and living in Milwaukee and, you know, working for the Packers, spent some time in Green Bay. So, you know, 18 years in Kansas City, 12 years in Wisconsin, moved to Phoenix, Arizona, there for 3 years, 2 years in New York, and then the last 6 in California. So I think, you know, I've had an opportunity. I've lived in Oxford, England for 6 months. So I've seen a lot in my 42 years of what I think based on probably our family and your perspective and how it's evolved. You know, you talk about being alive, like hell. There's been times, and I'm sure we'll talk through those times where it was scary. You know, I think again how I parent, how I show up. I got to see how Mom and Dad parented you, which was much different. They parented me because we're different individuals, which is probably different. And I'm excited to hear Dusty talk as well because, you know, this opportunity that you say to sit and communicate to each other is one that I was really excited about because to learn more because our parents aren't here. I have a lot of questions that I don't have answers to. And a lot of times I can give you a call and get your perspective and hear it, and it's different than mine. So I'm excited about it. Jake, congrats. It should be a cool conversation, and I'm excited for where Just Jake's going to go kicking off today.
Gracias. Dusty?
Yeah, wow. I got to follow that, huh? Yeah, as Jake said earlier, Dusty Gutierrez, Jake's older brother by 8 years, and to Derek by 10 years. So, you guys have a little bit different perspective just because you guys were closer. I've always kind of been jealous of that relationship and the fact that you guys grew up and, at the same age doing some of the things, same interests. But born and raised here, I think every place I've lived has been within 20 minutes or so of where we grew up. So totally different than your journey, Derek. 4 girls, 23, 21, and then had so much fun doing that, decided to do it again, and have 11 and 9-year-olds that are, awesome. Love spending time with them and watching them grow up, become the individuals they are, and helping some of them coaching them right now in soccer, which is, not something I really did a whole lot with the older ones. So that's fun. But yeah, I guess really super proud of you and the journey that you've been on. And yeah, like when you said Derek called me and told me about doing this, super excited that you were going to bring us on, and so happy for you and what you've done and the growth that you've made, and that you're going to be sharing that with, all of your listeners. I think that's, I couldn't be more proud of what the man that you've become and how you're going to be able to help people in the future. So looking forward to doing this with you guys and listening to all of your podcasts going forward.
Right on. And hopefully, this will be something we can do at least annually, maybe quarterly, or, regularly is how we should say it. I think there's a lot of family trauma in any family, right? I think that's just part of being alive.
Yeah.
And I think for us, for me, I've done a lot of individual work. I've seen a therapist regularly. I have an aspect in a, part of my, being that needed to be healed. That, I had to figure out why I was doing some of those things that I was doing to myself. And when I go back and reexamine that stuff, a lot of that came from our childhood, and I don't think I'm unique by any means because of that. And so I think this can be an awesome healing process for all 3 of us, but also anybody who's open to it, that experiences trauma as a child. I think that's normal. And I think how you deal with that trauma is what makes us grow as individuals and become healthy people. So I guess without further ado, we'll kind of go into, I think we have some video or some photos here of this guy. Sorry, it's funny, it's sad, there's a lot of emotions. Why don't you guys tell me what you think about this guy?
Well,
don't even recognize
the walrus.
Yeah.
The walrus right there in Vegas. Was for your bachelor party. I remember that. That was memorable. I mean, we can look at it and laugh today,
right.
Jake. I mean, again, you talked about killing, like, being 44. Like, I think Dusty and I probably had some sidebar conversations. Yeah, you were extremely unhealthy.
You think?
That's, I don't know how better to put it, but it's a different guy, but I mean, it's still Jake, right? Like,
yeah, we don't have me without.
I mean,
that guy.
Is that the old 76er or the 96er? How many?
75 ouncer.
Jesus, good stash.
I don't really have any words. I mean, it's just a totally different person. I remember certain aspects of those times, but It's like two different lives, two different people. And I love this version way better.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I can't tell you how fortunate I am to be here. But it is part of my message, part of what I tell other people. But really, how many times I know for certain you both shared concern with me at different points in time, and just it falling on complete deaf ears. That's the kind of thing, like, nobody could do it for me, right? Like, you guys wanted to. I know, like, especially Mom, right? Like, damn.
Yeah.
Like, how bad she wanted it for me. But that's the reality, is that until I had to realize, like, I don't need your solution. Like, I don't need your solution because I don't have a problem. Yeah, Deb, like, I remember it was probably June, and we'll talk about my mom and dad, and Bob was somebody who suffered from the same illness that I suffer from, which is alcoholism. And we lost an uncle at 43. He died of cirrhosis of the liver. I believe, and I think Mom shared some of those beliefs with me about our grandfather getting Alzheimer's at the age he did, and living with, some people call a wet brain due to his drinking. And, the fact that she sat down with me, it was probably June or July before she passed in 2007, and just flat out said, I'm done, right? I'm done worrying about you and your father's drinking. I don't have much time left. And she passed away on New Year's Eve in 2007 with a long, long battle with cancer. And she said, I'm done. I can't waste any more energy on you and your father. And my response was, my drinking? You're comparing me to Dad? Like, you're crazy. And it's interesting just to watch, I look back and I see a lot of things that I didn't recognize at the time. I think we all do. Conversations that we had with Dad even after Mom passed about his drinking. And I don't want to really make this about our father's struggles, but it's impossible for me to not correlate them. Like, it's just, I think when I look at how we grew up, and correct me if I'm wrong, and this is just my perception, but like, I was a complete mama's boy. Like, Dad and I clashed. Like, and I just feel like, this is like I said, my view of, and it's skewed because it's mine.
But just, it's interesting that you say you and Dad clash, because I think Mom would say it. I mean, I got to see it firsthand. You two were known as being hard-headed, and I would say she was willing to fight. And so you guys would have blow-ups, and because everything would be an argument. Like, you couldn't just take, this is what we're going to go do. No. I'm going to go do what Jake's going to do. It wasn't about everyone else. It was about what Jake wanted to do. And Mom, that doesn't work for parents. And Dad, I would say, was a lot quieter, just in like how his approach. And I'd almost say, like, he would just get fed up enough with the arguing, and then he would yell.
Right.
And that's when you guys would clash. So I guess the mama's boy comment, to me, it's you guys clash, but you got that relationship probably was developed because of the dialogue it wasn't easy for probably either one of you. And it was tough to listen to for me. I
bet. I think it's tough for everybody to listen to, honestly. But Mom and I were oil and water, so to speak. But it was like, I felt like she saw something within me that was signifying that there were going to be struggles in my future. And so I think she did everything, like witnessing, the view of what she had watching Uncle Art, drink himself to death. And then, and I have this later on the list, but we might as well just dive into it. But our parents were divorced when I was 7 years old. So in 1987, after first grade, I think it was the summer of 87, our mom and dad got divorced, which is, in 1987, it wasn't a very common thing. Now more than 50% of the time it happens. But I remember, going to a small Catholic school, and me and one other person had divorced parents in second grade out of a class of 30, 2 people. So me and this other gal had to go see a counselor once a week because we had divorced parents, but everybody else's parents were together. I think where I was starting to go with that is, I remember developing an early anger at our father because I witnessed our mother being, visibly upset by him that I never got over, and I held against him. I was talking to Derek about this earlier yesterday, and like I can vividly remember the moment that Derek was 5, I was 7, and Dusty, you were 15. So
Yeah.
I don't, like. Do you remember how Dad told you about?
I don't remember a whole lot about it. I remember he took me out to the driveway and told me in the car, and that's really all I really remember. I remember that I'm like, I can't believe this is happening.
Right.
Same thing. Like, I'm gonna have to go to school. People are gonna know this is embarrassing. I even remember, there are discussions in school about divorced parents, and like we get like anyone with a divorced parents raise your hand. I like, nope,
Yeah.
not doing that because there was, stigma attached to it back then,
Especially being in Catholic schools.
yeah, and super embarrassing. But I don't really remember. I mean, I'm at a different age. There was a lot more going on with me.
Yeah.
High school and stuff. So I don't.
When I asked you first, because I don't remember you being with us when he told us.
No, I was it was just him and I in the car.
Yeah. Because I don't think I fully grasped what was going on. It's like, well, I'm not going to be living here anymore. And it's like, oh, okay, where are you going to be living? And it's like, well, I'm getting my own place, but I'm still going to be around. I'm still going to coach your baseball teams. I'll still be in the house. I'll still come by the house. And so it's like, oh, well, this is whatever concept of a 7-year-old understanding what's going on. But it wasn't until he got in his van and took off, and then Mom was like in tears in the kitchen, and it made me angry, pissed. And I remember running up into my top bunk and yelling pretty, for a 7-year-old, probably some foul language, asshole or something. But I remember like watching his car go to the end of the street and turn right, and then, just remember being really angry. And like it took me a while just to suppress that anger and get to a place, where I was comfortable. And that took some time where, okay, here's the routine. Okay. And then, had a hamster over at Dad's apartment and had, a pool and tennis courts. And, okay, I'm starting to get integrated with this. I understand, what weekends I'm doing what. And then it's like, I remember that same anger erupting when I overheard Mom tell Grandma Bev that Bob and I are getting back together. And I remember storming out our kitchen and slamming that big metal door and just being furious, just irate that how are you doing this to me again? Which is, you would think, and I'm curious what your guys' reaction were. It's probably like, this is great. Dad's moving back home. I don't know. That's, that, for me, a normal kid whose parents are getting remarried, because that's also part of the story of our parents, that they got remarried to each other, in 4 or 5 years later in 1991, and so, and my whole reason of going through this, right, is I never, I ask Mom all the time, like, why'd you and Dad even get divorced? And all she would say, I don't know if you guys ever asked her that, She would say it was your father's choice. It's your dad's choice. So my whole life I was like, well, Dad wanted to get a divorce. And as I've gotten, further along in my journey and connecting with Mom and Dad when they're not here and understanding, what was going on, I truly believe that Mom was like, you need to quit drinking or we're done. And Dad was like, that's not happening.
Yeah, I mean, just to jump in, it's tough that we don't as adults, and Dusty, you probably did more than Jake and I, and Jake, maybe even you more than me, but I mean, I wouldn't even say I was an adult when Mom and Dad passed away, both of them. Like I was, 25 and, in 2011, I was 29. But being an adult and looking back on it now, like, shit, there's a reason that it's so prevalent, divorce. I mean, think about how they got together. Like, think about how long they were married, that they've, there's things that, again, when you're 7 years old, when I'm 5 years old, we don't have that perspective. That's what I'd like to have the opportunity to talk to him now.
Sure.
Like, what was it like for, that time to get to that point? Because I think it was probably really hard as, two 20-year-olds or however old they were, and having a young child, then two more, and whether it's alcoholism or whatever else. But yeah, I mean, I remember very similar to you of being mad. If you said, you asshole, I probably said, you asshole, like whatever, but I do remember looking out the window. I also remember Mom crying, and I think that's a core memory of like, you made my mom cry. And like, I think about relationships that I have now, of just how emotions were not communicated back then. Like we didn't
Never talked about anything.
Right.
The fact that we get to sit here and talk, that's an evolution for just open dialogue that we never had. Like,
Way
again, I know
overdue
we're gonna
for the three of us too.
yeah,
Probably.
I mean, we never really ever sat down and talked
No,
about this stuff.
No, these aren't discussions, and like, Dad went to a 12-step program, did you, I don't know if either one of you were aware of that, regularly, when Mom would tell me Dad was going to meetings, I was like, oh, optimist, optimist club. But like that discussion, Dad's illness was never open on the table. It's never like, hey, your dad's an alcoholic, and he actually. So this is my belief to continue on what she said. It's his choice, and I think she's told him, hey, if you ever want to quit drinking, I'll still be here, raising the boys, but as long as you're drinking, you're not going to be living in the same house as they are. And then 4 years later, he gets sober. And he fulfills that part of his,
Does he get sober?
Yeah. I mean, I know people that I think there was a period of time he got sober. Absolutely. From my understanding, and people who, from other, I don't know, but other people have told me, people that, went to the same adult meetings that he went to.
But I think that's also a piece of it. That he was a closet alcoholic. We did, in our home, I don't remember drinking happening at all besides Mom's bunko groups and there's green slushies.
Right.
And
wine down at the, Rodriguez's.
Never
mom
in our house.
Yeah.
So alcoholism, drinking was not part of at all our we didn't even, I never saw it.
Right.
So what's the reason? Who knows? As far as that, when you're a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, or, as you go through that, even as you 15-year-old, why did Mom and Dad, I think I have their divorce papers that I found in a stack of papers somewhere. I think I looked at them probably when I was, high school or something. So I should probably find those again and see what is in there. I don't think it says anything about alcoholism.
No.
But, that's why I asked, was he ever sober? Because you never,
yeah, I don't know.
You never really knew when he was drinking. And that was different than you. I mean, hell,
Yeah.
you would drink.
No, Bob was a sniper. He was a sniper drinker. We never saw him openly consume.
My entire life, I never saw him have one drink.
I saw like that. I mean, again, I found out Dad was an alcoholic probably when I was 20, 18. I was in college, and I would think you know this story, Dusty, but I think you guys both knew that he was drinking, and I was coming of age if I could just tell. Like something was off, but I'd never seen him in my whole life. There was never alcohol around the house. There was never, we'd go to parties. Dad, he would drink sparkling water. He would drink
Diet Coke,
whatever it was. And he just seemed off and like in high school, I'd take advantage of him just because he was tired. I thought like, hey, I got 2 pairs of shoes in 2 days because Dad and I went to the mall. Like I got rollerblades. Like I was just like, I'll split it with you, Dad. Okay. And I got stuff. And like, that was me taking advantage of a drunk dad who probably was just, like
Trying to be a good dad.
hanging out. Like, let's go have fun.
Yeah.
Hey, buy it. And then, as I spent time with them when I was back home from school, I was like, God, something's up. And we were working at arts. And again, I think that's part of his alcoholism is he ran a business. He was the boss.
Yeah.
No one was going to question him. Hey, I'm going to the bank. I don't think Dad's going to the bank. I remember getting in the mom's white Jeep.
Yeah.
And I said, you can come with me or not, Jake. I'm following Dad. And followed him down to a liquor store. Okay, he's not going to the bank. Walks in the liquor store. And I get out of the car, walk in. He's at the counter with a bottle of gin. And it was, Dad put that down.
It's Bacardi, but
Bacardi, yeah.
Rum, whatever.
I remember. I remember exactly.
Yeah, I probably blacked out. Just like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And then
You made him go throw it away.
Yeah, and then he sat in the car and broke down. And again, I didn't see him drink it.
I mean, I feel like a dick remembering that because he's sitting there telling you, I'm done. And I'm like, don't believe him. He's lying to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, shit.
And then,
again,
you got upset with me.
Each perspective
Right.
is different. I mean, like, yeah, I went, I was holding him to his word.
Yeah.
Hey, you're gonna stop drinking. You promised me. You looked me in the eyes. Again, I'm interested in your guys' experience with that, but like, yeah, I guess that was how I found out. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, but I do believe that he got sober. I mean,
Yeah.
I for a period of time. I think that's why Mom took him back. I think that's why they got remarried. And then, shortly after that, Mom gets sick and, he tries to hold it together. I don't know when he started drinking again, but I mean, it happened probably within 5 or 6 years of that, I would say. I mean, probably sometime, in the late 90s. He got sober in 91 and probably held it together. I mean, I think Mom had suspicions, but yeah, he was a sniper drinker. But my point being is that, I guess the reason we pull this out on the table is, Mom saw that in me,
mm-hmm.
right? And I don't think she saw that in either one of you. And so she was like, shit, this boy has his dad's alcoholism and he's got my temper. He's screwed. And I think she felt a sense of responsibility. Like I said, I don't know. I can just tell you what I can glean from looking back at it and why they both probably paid more attention to me because I was at danger. I was putting myself at danger. We saw what it ended up looking like, full manifest. And so I think she kind of held on to that as like, this is somewhat my fault because I brought this boy into this world and it's Bob's fault too. And I'm going to do my best to try to shield him from it, shield all of them from it. But, that's the dynamic that, it happened all the way it was supposed to happen, because, I'm without experiencing all that the way we did, it's like we're not sitting here the way we are without that. And so, you guys are both parents. I'm not. And the way I look at it is Mom and dad, their love for me was at such a next level that, they basically sacrificed themselves so I could. And I hope this doesn't sound too selfish. I think they did it for all three of us. But it's like I didn't really hit my bottom till Dad passed, And for me, like that was my I have free reign now. No, nobody can tell me how to drink. Nobody can tell me to stop drinking because you don't know what it's like to be me. So any friend that, saw Jake blacked out at the bar, hey, dude, I don't know if you need that drink. I'd look at him and be like, the fuck you talking about? You know what it's like to be me? You lost a parent? How about two? What would you be like right now if you did? And they'd shut up real quick. And, I'd just turn it right back on them. But, I remember, within hours of Dad passing, this being a thought in my head is that, I can drink exactly how I want now, and nobody can say anything to me. Green light. That's why I'm an alcoholic. That's alcoholic thinking, because that's insanity.
Two things that come to mind. One, you mentioned Mom's love and just how she gave so much. I think there's also this massive piece of Mom knowing that time there is an end date that is sooner than later for her, and I have to parent these boys, these young men, in a way that I'm not going to be here, and I don't know when that end date's going to come. So I'm going to love them as much as I can. I'm going to be a hard ass. I'm going to try to instill as much as I can on them as I possibly can in the years that I have. And I think she probably saw that with you more than us, of oh shit, if I can't see him stop drinking before I die, then what will happen? And she won't know, right? And again, grateful that you're here, and figure that out on your own. So I think about that a lot, of just the impact they had on us. Mom knew that her time was limited, and so she had to parent us. And even as a parent, I don't think of my time as limited. I think about it as a marathon versus a sprint. We're not guaranteed tomorrow, but hey, in the long run, I don't think Mom ever thought about the long run. It was the long run of our lives.
Right.
But she probably won't see it. I think she knew that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, especially, when the cancer came, so Mom's story was she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 92. She went through rigorous treatments of chemotherapy and radiation, which, it's brutal now, but, in 1992, that looked a lot different. It was brutal, and that's some of the work that I've done that you don't realize when you're 12 years old and you're watching your mom go through that you're living in a extremely the trauma base is my mom might not live, and you don't know that as a young man, as a 20-year-old or a 12-year-old, or a 10-year-old, and I had to go back and love that little 12-year-old boy and tell him it's going to be okay, that, hey, it's going to be okay, instead of, me just, living with that trauma. And it's man, I I was an angry kid, from an early age, angry, and I'm not really certain where it came from. But, I was angry about a lot, and it didn't take a whole lot to get me angry. That's stuff I've had to work on. I think I was just born with a temperament that's angry sometimes, that can go to a natural default of just being angry. And if I live at that state for too long, it's very threatening to my well-being. And so I look at it today as a blessing to practice, if I don't have that character defect, so to speak, that I don't get to practice patience, and that helps me cultivate the person I am today. Just like, it sounds insane when you're in early recovery, when you hear people say, I'm a grateful alcoholic. Like, what's there to be grateful about? Right? Like, what a death sentence. Like, 3% of you actually make it out alive. 3%. Right? That's not a very good, like, my odds aren't very good.
Yeah.
But 3% of alcoholics and addicts actually live. That's a real number. So it's like, why me and not Dad? Why me and not Uncle Art? Right? It's like, I don't have to understand that, right? But I can understand that I get to be the end of it, right? This family trauma that stems from who knows where, right? I get to be the one that says, no, not with me, right? And so, I've had weird conversations with Uncle Art, I've had weird conversations with Dad, especially Uncle Art, though. Like that man went through a lot. Like Vietnam, we could never even imagine what that guy went through.
I think, will you specify, though? Like, you have weird conversations with Uncle Art. Like, how old were you when Uncle Art passed away?
91.
Yeah, 91. So I was 11.
Okay, so you're having weird conversations with Uncle Art, or like since he's passed?
Since he's passed.
Okay, I think that's relevant because, like,
yeah, because I'm like, what
yeah,
kind of weird conversations is an 11-year-old having with his
No, more like it's probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
So I have an intuition that, I can get in touch with the spirit world, I guess, when I'm tuned in, tapped in, and know what's going on with Jake and God, and I can step outside of that. And sometimes it's it's really easy to ignore and not, because it's a lot of energy. It takes a lot out of you, because first you're like, I'm fucking crazy. Like, maybe I need to go get checked out. But I know it, today I believe every soul being in this universe has the ability to do it. So what do I mean by conversations with Uncle Art is, I felt his presence many a times. And just, look, he was an example of what an alcoholic was for me for the longest time.
I think he's just an example of what an alcoholic is. Yeah, obviously for you, but
I'll be more clear. He was the definition of an alcoholic in Jake Gutierrez's mind. Like when someone said you're an alcoholic, I'd say bullshit.
Yeah,
I've seen an alcoholic.
That makes sense.
I've seen one. I saw him when I was 11.
Yeah, that's not me.
And that's not me, right? And so I vividly remember. I don't know if either one of you do. I think I've talked to you about this. Going over to that house in Kansas City, Kansas, and going and saying bye to, and Dad was pretty touched up, and I think he felt obligated. This was his older brother, and he didn't have much time. And, he wanted his sons to say goodbye to their uncle. And so I remember him, before we even went in the house, he's like, this is going to be really bad. But, I can't tell you what we're going to see in there, but all you need to do is go in and say, I love you, Uncle Art, and give him a hug, and then we'll get out of here. And so, that was, all our life. Like, we didn't even really get to spend much time. Like, I have a picture of Uncle Art that I cherish. I have it on my puja table that I meditate in front of. And it's him blowing out birthday candles. And Derek's on the right of him, and I think Dusty, you're in the back with Jeff. And then he has his arm around me. And it's just me and him. And then Dad and Derek. But it's like there's definitely space around everybody else, and then just me and Uncle Art. It's a picture I cherish. But so for the longest time, he was the definition of what an alcoholic was for me.
When you say you cherish it, what about it? Like, 'cause like, yeah, this is a conversation here. What do you cherish about it?
I cherish the fact that on a level, he sacrificed his life so I could be sober today.
That's okay. That helps me understand. I see that. Okay.
Because those conversations, you know, one specifically was him saying thank you. Like, I'm free. You freed me from this disease by you defeating it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Right? And so on whatever level, he knew one day this little 5-year, 6-year-old boy was going to free him in whatever arena he was in. You know?
Mm-hmm.
He no longer has to suffer because, you know, we're all extensions of each other, especially when we're all blood, you know? And so, you know, being that for the longest time, you know, I looked at that and I was like, you know, that's the definition of an alcoholic, and I'm never going to be that, right? And then where I was going is like, you know, I had these just like things that I would ignore that, you know, I would feel his presence and I was just like, that's fucking weird. And then it started happening more and more often. And then like in 2020, like I had one really strong when I was on a run, like at 3 a.m. before I went into work, I was on a run and I just stopped in my run. I said, fucking stop it. Like, fucking stop it. Like, if you really are existing, like, fucking, like, walk out in front of me as a deer. I stood there and was like, okay, then leave me the fuck alone. Like, and I just went on and finished my run.
Did you know who you were talking to?
Uncle Art.
Okay.
Leave me alone,
Yeah.
man. Leave me alone. And so, fast forward, finished my run, went on work. It didn't feel like I was, you know, I was light after that, you know. And then that evening, I'm walking Lena on the golf course, right, on Brook Ridge. And it's like sun setting. It's just me and Lena, and we're just going on our evening walk. And all of a sudden, this big deer just starts walking out of the woods that night. And I was like, all right, I'll shut the fuck up now and I'll start listening. And so those conversations happen, you know.
I think that's important, though, because there had to have been something in your mind that you're open to because that was you asked for the deer at a 3 a.m. run, 3 a.m, going for a run, fucking stop this. If you're going to actually show yourself, be a deer and walk out here. It didn't, and you could just move on.
Right.
And then in a totally separate setting, walking a dog, a deer comes and you're open to connect those two. And to me, I think that's a really important piece of who Jake is, because I don't think I'm who I am mentally without you sharing that experience of being open to that exists. That deer is it could have been next week and you could have said thank you, now we're going, but like you were open to it. And that mentality, I think, is one thing that is really important to me, because it's allowed me to live my life differently with you sharing that type of experience, because it goes, oh, wow, okay, you were open to it. And keep going. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, this is open dialogue.
Because there's more of these types of experiences. Because when I explain you, hey, he's connected. Jake's connected because you've given me some messages that have freed me. And I know we're talking Uncle Art right now, so but I think that's important, that the fact that that's such an unlock in a journey in your mentality of being open to a message, being open to receiving, hey, Uncle Art, shut up. Like, I hear you. A lot of people, maybe listening to this or otherwise, could be pushing that shit out. Or, hey, there's a red-tailed hawk, or there's a hummingbird, or there's a dragonfly. And again, we'll get into some of those things, but those all have meaning to me.
Yeah.
Because of a deer, or because of how you've communicated that with me. I think it's really important that we're all connected.
Sure. And I think full circle, and to kind of tie this portion up is where I was going, like long-winded way and a roundabout, but it's like, that's why I'm a grateful alcoholic.
Yeah.
Right? Because that openness, right, is all stemmed from me, connecting with a spirituality, because if I don't, I end up like that guy up there.
Were you drinking at the time that the deer?
No, this
is 2020.
This is 2020.
Okay, yeah.
None of this happened till after I got sober.
Yeah.
I'll strike that. There was an experience I had, which I look back at now as like one of my first, like, I have an interesting relationship with God, as we all do, right? All three of us grew up Catholic. I still have a great appreciation for our upbringing in Catholicism, and I understand why it was so important to mom and dad, and especially mom, that we have some kind of faith in our life. She was a strong-willed woman who had a deep faith rooted in a power greater than herself, a great love and appreciation for Jesus Christ. But, where I was going in terms of what that has to do with who I am today is that I get sober and like I have all these experiences because I am open, right? But they stop as soon as I stop growing, right? But like I had an experience which I like, it was proof for me that God did exist, because I needed that at certain points in time. I don't think I ever questioned God and its existence of God. It was just like, at some points in time, I was just resided to the fact that, I'm just bad and that's just the way it's going to go. And, if there is a hell, whatever, I don't care. And you could see some of that in the way I live my life. But there was a time that I was working at the station and I get a phone call from Martha Banning. His dad was going through treatments, and he'd gone into the hospital and was really sick. It was probably, it was the beginning of his run to the end to his transition. But he'd just gotten admitted to KU Med, and they put a patient in the same room of him that had C. diff, which is I think it's a bacterial disease, infection, so to speak. And Martha Banning called me, like, panicked. And she's like, I just tried to get your dad moved, but since I'm not family, they won't listen to me. You have to get down here. You have to get him out of that room. And I'm like, I'm live on the air, Martha. What am I supposed to do? She's like, this is life and death. Like, you need to get down here in, like, yesterday. And so, luckily I work at a great place that, said, go. Get the fuck out of here. And so I just remember driving down to KU Med in a fucking panic. Like, what am I going to do? Like, this is so overwhelming. Like, how am I? Like, I think, one, I was probably pretty hungover from the night before. And, just like mind racing. Like, why is this falling on me? Like, fuck this. Like, I can't handle this. This is like, Dad's fucked. Like, I don't know what to do. And so I just started praying. Started saying Our Father and, like, asking Mom to help me. Like, I need your help. I surrendered. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And then, like, I remember pulling into KU Med. I remember parking. I remember walking into that hospital. And I don't really remember anything after that. I don't remember the conversations of me with the nurses and then demanding a doctor coming in and then talking to the doctor. And then I remember getting Dad his own room and be sitting in Dad just being like, this is way better. And me sitting there being like, the fuck just happened? Like, what just happened was clearly not of my doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, whoa, you know, but then my ego comes back in. It's like, yeah, I did. That's right. I did that. Fucking hey, Dad, you're right. I got your back, you know, but me well knowing today is like something fucking jumped in and just, you know, used my vessel to coordinate something better. Right. And it's like, now that I look at that, like that's like my example that something in this universe exists that's bigger than Jake. You know, I didn't really, you know, I didn't tune in on that, you know, because I mean, I thought, look, the way I felt and acted and I clearly wasn't in complete denial that I had a problem because I had, you know, I had conversations with Jake being like, you know, there's going to be a day where this is going to have to end. The party's going to have to end sometime, you know, and it's like, there was always a next time. But I do remember, like, in, like, kind of, I can look at it now, but it was kind of befuddling, right? And I was living with Dad, and he just started chemo, and, you know, it was a Monday. He'd get chemo bags on Monday, and I'd go, you know, he'd schedule them after I got off the radio, and I'd go sit in KU Med with him, like, at 11, and we'd do it for an hour, and then, you know, he would go do his Monday stuff, and I'd say, okay, I got some stuff I got to go do. I'll meet you back at home, right? And meet you back at home. We'll figure out what we're having for dinner, you know. And then I remember coming home, and Dad was just drunk, and I'd just be like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what the fuck? Like, how could you possibly be drinking? We just said, you just got chemo today and you're drunk. Like, what the fuck? Right? But that makes complete sense to me today. Like, that makes all the sense. I'm like, yeah, I get that. Totally get that. Makes 100% sense to me. At the time, it's like, what the fuck's wrong with you? As, you know, as I'm drinking probably by myself up in my bedroom, you know, but not thinking like, well, I don't have cancer. I didn't just go get chemotherapy. This is all right. You know, there's nothing wrong with this. But, you know, what I come to understand today is like, one, Dad was sick as fuck. He just lost his wife. He hated the way he felt. And the only thing that he knew on planet Earth that would make him feel better was alcohol. Total sense. That's alcoholic thinking, right? Because I'm not I've never had a drinking problem. I've never had a drinking problem ever in my life. I've never had a drinking problem. What I've had a problem living without a drink. I don't know how to live without a drink. I don't have a problem with alcohol because alcohol is not my problem. Alcohol is my solution. I hate the way I feel. I put about 3 shots of Jim Beam in me, and I'm good. Until I need number 4 and number 5 and number 6 and number 7, right? Because I'm allergic to alcohol. I activate a craving in my body. The acetopes in my body doesn't break down alcohol the way a normal person does, right? And so I activate a craving, and so once I get that ease and comfort from my first couple drinks, the craving's activated, and I can't stop drinking till I either run out of alcohol or I pass out. And, you know, that's why I've never had a drinking problem. Like, I wish I had a drinking problem. I wish. Because guess what? I'll just solve my problem, and then I'm good, right? I have a deadly illness that is, right now, it's in the parking lot doing push-ups, being like, I'm waiting, motherfucker, and I'm not going away. I'm waiting. I'm just going to sit here and do push-ups and get stronger, because I'm patient. And alcoholism and addiction is a patient disease. And it'll wait for you, you know? And so, you know, what I know through all that is that I have understanding that took my life experiences, that witnessed Dad. You know, I belong to a fellowship, and we work 12 steps. And, I don't know if I've ever shared this. I might have shared it with Derek. I don't know if I might have shared it with both of you. But, it like where I was starting this whole conversation in terms of you guys being parents and me not being a parent and mom and dad, literally sacrificing themselves so I can be here today, because like if mom and dad were still alive, I don't know if I would have hit the bottom the way I needed to hit a bottom. Right? I don't have to, and I hate playing what if, but it took that utter bottom of being so angry with my life and not like hating the way I felt, and only like I'm so depressed. I don't like life. I don't really want to be alive, but I'm too big of a coward to pull the trigger. So I'll just eat myself to death and drink myself to death because it's a lot more respectable way to go, right? I don't want to be a coward and shoot myself, but I'll just eat myself and drink myself to death because, people do it every day, And so, on some level, they passed away and Jake hit his bottom because of that. But it's also, to go back to the grateful alcoholic is that, if I'm not an alcoholic, if I'm just a real hard drinker, if I just like to drink, but I don't, have that, if I just have a drinking problem, I'm probably just a really big asshole today. Mm-hmm. Probably just, someone who, I can stop drinking for a couple months at a time and manage my health, but I'm probably a pretty miserable dick. And I think that's what you saw me growing up. I'm not saying I was a horrible kid because I think there were a lot of glimpses of the real me. But I think in the majority of the time, if Jake didn't get what Jake wanted, you're all going down. I'm a suicide bomber. I'm walking into this room with mom and dad and Derek and Dusty, and I'm getting what I want. And if you say no, oh boy, I'm pushing the button, and you guys are all getting shrapnel.
Yeah, I'd say usually the fun Jake is drink 1 to drink 4, 5, 6. See you later, asshole, blacked out, whatever else.
Yeah,
and that's probably the pent up. And even when you're sober, which is seldom. Yeah, it was all about Jake. Like, you're so much nicer, calmer. Like, you're a great brother, uncle, friend. But yeah, that's different than the alcoholic Jake. But also, I'd made a note about, trauma and other things. But like, it wasn't just like, when you were talking about sitting at a bar and saying, like, hey, maybe this is your last drink. No, fuck you. Like, I've lost 2 parents. It wasn't just like I lost 2 parents young. It was I watched them die. Mm. I sat in
it wasn't a car wreck or something.
I sat in hospitals overnight in Houston, Texas, or KU Med, or found my mom on the floor of a bathroom, unable to move, or your dad drooling because he was also a diabetic and he was low blood sugar, like, or your grandpa was, unable to bathe himself because he had Alzheimer's, like that. Those things affect us humans differently, and everyone has a different way of coping with it. And for an alcoholic, I could see it, who you just said didn't like their life, didn't like themselves, was pissed off, has seen a shit ton. And again, perspective, like, we're not living in Ukraine or Syria, or like, we're living in this amazing country, but like, for a kid who goes through divorce and watches their parents die, I mean, like, that's hard. And it was draining mom's stomach and other things that, like, again, affects people differently. But I think that's a very important aspect and dynamic of who you are, of being able to see, and I mean, obviously who we are, but like, for an alcoholic, you dealt with it differently. But I think that's part of, hey, fuck you. Like, you don't know what I've been through.
Yeah. Yeah. And where I was going with that opening up about, hey, I don't know if I've shared this with you, but, I do step work, and part of that step work is going back through my past and cleaning up. And I've made amends to both you gentlemen at different points in time individually. And I feel like this is a living amends that I'm making to you guys on a daily basis. Certainly to mom and dad, how I live my life on a daily basis is my amends to them. But, because, look, I'm an alcoholic, and I'll find any reason to get a drink in me, good or bad. And I used to share that solution with everybody. Like I said, it was my solution, not my problem. And I would share that with anybody who'd want it. Like, oh, you're having a kid? Awesome, man. Let's go have a drink. Mm-hmm. On me. That's my solution. Or you got fired from a job? Fuck, that sucks. Let me go share my solution with you. First drink's on me. It's like for the rest of my life, there's nothing that can happen to me that will cause me to take a drink. If I ever take a drink for the rest of my life, it's only because of one reason. One reason. It's the only reason I'll ever drink ever again. And that's because I'm an alcoholic. And guess what alcoholics do? They drink, right? That's what alcoholics do. That's why it's a miracle I'm not drinking. That's why, that's a miracle of God, that I'm not drinking because I'm an alcoholic. And what alcoholics do, alcoholics drink, man. That's what they do. That's why it's not surprising when, it's not surprising that Dad got sober and he died an alcoholic, and I'm kind of brushing the edge of where I'm going here is that, man, I watched that firsthand. I watched Dad detox in the hospital. I was in there every day, and I didn't want to be in there every day. I wanted a day off, and then I'd get a phone call from somebody that was hey, your dad wants to know when you're getting down here. Mm-hmm. And it's like, tell him I'm on my way. But I also realized that, what I witnessed was not pretty. It was an alcoholic death. I mean, he sobered up in the hospital for 3.5 weeks. And I saw all of it, But I also got 3.5 weeks of Dad's life with him at the end. And by the time, at the end, I don't think there's a person that he trusted more on this planet than me, which is a revolution to me. But it's also that ability that I had to sit there and be with Dad is something that today I look at as a God-given it's ability that not everybody can do. It's not for everybody. I wouldn't wish it on most people, right? Because, my work in hospice, that's, I finally got to a point where it's if I'm not doing this, then I'm kind of I'm wasting this gift that God gave me. But also it's through doing this work, it's I was sitting, with another man going through this inventory is what we call it. And, I make a list of resentments. These are people and entities that I resent, right? And I started this. I'm I don't have any resentments, dude. I don't need to write anything down. Here. What did you used to drink about? What would make you drink? And I just started writing, what would make me drink? Thinking about my mom and dad in the hospital. What would make me drink? Thinking about me being in the hospital and my brothers not being in the hospital. So I had you guys at the top of my list. Turn around and say, there's my list. He's like, well, your brothers. Why you resent them? I was like, well, I was in the hospital every day watching my dad die. And, one came once in a while and the other one was not even living in town. And that's my recollection. You could have been there just as much as I, and I wouldn't have. This was just my skewed perspective. Yeah. My perspective of this was skewed, right? It's an alcoholic's perspective, so it's all about me, right? And so, first question he asked me is are either one of your brothers alcoholics? I said no. He's like, oh. Do you think they needed to watch your dad die that way? I said, probably not. He said, was it very pleasant? I said, no, it was very unpleasant. He said, so you watched your dad die an alcoholic death, basically. Cancer and pneumonia got him at the end, but you watched him dry out. You watched an alcoholic detox himself, you know? And he said, do you think your brothers need to see that? Like, for any recollection? Like, no, they don't. Like, what's your point here, man? He's like, you are an alcoholic. And if you ever decide to pick up a drink ever again, well, that's probably where you're ending up. So you have a pretty good picture of what that looks like. Pretty good picture of what if you decide, for whatever reason, that a drink's a good idea, that's probably what it's going to look like for you. Maybe it's important. Maybe God put you in that chair for a reason. Like maybe your dad went through that for a reason. So you could see it and decide on a daily basis, is that what I want? Is that my choice today? Right? And then to add layers on top of that, it's like, wow, Dad completely sacrificed himself so I could see that. Mm-hmm. So I can be 9.5 years sober, sitting here, and he can be up there being like, yep, way to go, bud. So it's like all these things, all these gifts, right? Because when you look at it, it's like, that's fucking horrible. You had to go through that? And it's like, no. Like that's created who I am today, right? It's like I try just to say thank you and I appreciate it, but it's like I'm sure you guys get this. Like as soon as somebody finds out, it's like, that your mom and dad passed away, especially, when we were younger, I mean, because it's been what, 07 and 2011. It's shocking how recent that seems to me, and then what the calendar says and how long ago that was. Almost 17 years, 14 years, whatever it is, but it's like the first thing is, oh, I'm sorry. And it's like, I just, you say, oh, I appreciate the kid. But it's like, I'm not sorry. Like, I'm not sorry that happened to me, and that's just me.
No, I'd love to hear, like, I agree with you. Like, differently, like, you shared, like, listening to that, I understand why you would say that. Like, it has a different meaning. Like, hey, I'm sorry, like, sorry that you lost your parents. You don't have them. Like, you don't, like, I get the, I'm sorry, oh, your parents, but it's horrible.
Yeah.
It does. It sucks. It sucks big time that, Grandma Debbie and Papa Bob are, hummingbirds and dragonflies. But how amazing is that? Grandma Debbie is a dragonfly and Papa Bob is a hummingbird. So I look at it like that journey that you were on of that you just took us through, the deer, the struggle, the sober, the evolution allows me to look at it differently, to now be open to those things because, again, I'm open to that. I'm open to listening to your experience. But I find a lot of like shaking my head, like, yeah, if someone says that to me, I'm sad that our parents are gone, but like
all the time, yeah.
But I also feel that I'm incredibly connected to them because of those things, because of the dragonfly and the hummingbird. And I get to tell my friends and it sucks that I have that experience, but like the comfort that can provide. I just had a great friend of mine, Randy's dad, passed away last week, and Joe was a great man. And another thing that we've talked about is, talk out loud.
Yeah.
They can hear you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, again, that journey that you were on has opened my world. I get it. Like, I understand when you say, hey, it's like, I'm grateful I saw that. Like, it sucks they're gone, but also, I guess the aha for me is, yeah, that sacrifice that they made allows us to operate the way we do. And again, if there's solace or comfort that others can hear, to look at things in a different perspective or a different light, I think is hugely valuable.
It's weird listening to you tell your perspective about why you sat there, because I always beat myself up. It's a little bit different for you because you weren't in town, but I beat myself up a lot about.
You beat yourself a lot? I'm sorry.
Beat myself up a lot. The fact that I wasn't there as much as you. I didn't spend as much time at the hospital as you did. I had a family, and
yeah, that's the first thing. Yeah, that's the first thing you said. It's like you had little girls and a wife, and I didn't. And Derek was out of town. It's like,
but it's just it's interesting to see that there was a reason why you were there.
Yeah,
and the reason I wasn't.
Yeah.
So I beat myself up a lot, but I'm like looking back on it now, I'm like, I didn't need to be there.
No,
Jake was there for
me. Yeah, and it's like, and kind of how it was framed. It's like, do you want that to be your last memories of Dad? Like seeing that? Like, I don't think that'd be good for either one of you.
No.
Right? I mean,
I still remember it, but not at the level that you do, and weren't there as much. But
I mean,
it's good hearing that, because I realize I don't need to beat myself up about that.
Yeah, let that go. I mean, because it's the perfection. Like it all happened exactly how it was supposed to happen. So I love sharing that with you. So you can shift your perspective now. It's like what that did for me, right? What that did was like, okay, this is right here. What I just wrote down. This is the fucking truth, right here. This is the fucking truth. Hook me up to a lie detector test. I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna pass that test. These two guys are assholes. I'm the good son, spending all my time down there, and you know what this fucking did to me? Like it fucking but like, this is the truth. But then what I got to do is like, oh wait, let me erase this. Oh, this isn't the truth. My brothers aren't assholes. One of them had a family. One of them had a wife and kids, and the other one lived out of town. And God put me in that seat for a reason. So I got to take this eraser and be like, whoa, nope. So what I believe in, right? One of my perspectives that I have is like the truth, it changes. Mm-hmm. It constantly changes. The truth is always changing, right? What's not changing are these facts, right? Facts don't change, but the truth does, right? So your truth can change now. You get to take eraser out, and like, you don't have to beat yourself up, because that's the way God wanted it.
Yeah.
Right? You get to erase that, because that's no longer true for you. You get to change your truth, right? The facts are the same.
Yep.
You were there the exact same amount of time as you were there yesterday, right? But today, like, you weren't supposed to be there any more than you were, right? You get to change that truth. And it's like,
I'd be interested to hear how your perspective changed after Mom died, because who was there when she died? You, me, Dad, and Darcy, I think.
yeah, oh boy. I got to. We'll get to that. I got to.
Two things real quick. One, your truth can change
Constantly.
I think that just needs to be like sat on for a second. Your truth can change. I think that's so important, to have the ability to allow your truth to change. Like, again, you wrote that down and you were able to change your truth. Mm. That's almost like kind of dropping your ego a little bit, because like, nope, it's my truth. And again, broader, much more, holistic to what's going on in the world. Again, staying in this room, but truth can change.
Yeah.
And allowing you to drop the, hey, it's whatever I think. God, what the power in that.
Oh.
And just to build on that, Dusty, you beating yourself up, I'm sitting here and it's amazing to listen to, because now I can sit here and have a different perspective of having a family. Balance, this fucking balance of life is hard, dude. It's really hard. You got a job. You got to pay the bills. You got to make your wife happy. You got 2 girls. You got brothers. You got friends. You got a dying parent. Like, fuck, you did great. And Dad valued the time. Like, you were probably Dad's best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, bar none.
Yeah.
Like, you were Dad's best friend.
I mean, you were his best man at his wedding.
Yeah.
Like, and this is the first time I've ever thought that and said that, but that's a truth to me. Is I look at it of looking at my dad and thinking through it. Of course you were his best friend. You know, like, obviously, like, we're friends, but there's having a firstborn, and again, when you're a dad, having your firstborn be a little boy, like, I'm not a hunter. I don't have a duck sticker on the back of my car. I don't, like, the connection that you had with Dad, that's a truth that, again, just listening and beating yourself up. To me, I was compelled to say that, but like, you showed up as much as you could, which was the perfect amount. And Jake, if you were there, it probably wouldn't have affected Jake the same way.
Absolutely.
Because it would have been like a tag team. Like, hey, you do this, I'll do this. No, Jake needed to sit there. And like, again, I'm just almost being Switzerland because I was up in Wisconsin. And I was like, hey, you know, like, but I also had the opportunity to live with Dad, you know, and I had a great employer who created a job and let me come down to Kansas City and got to live with them for 10 months. And so again, I think that perspective, that openness that we talked about, the truth that can evolve, it's powerful to listen to. It's powerful to be part of it and be able to say, hey, no, dude, maybe that truth isn't right. So,
you know, I think for the longest time I beat myself up because I felt like I was his best friend.
Yeah.
And needed to be there more. And then listening to what Jake says, that just brings it full circle, brings it home that I was there the amount I needed to be.
Yeah.
Jake needed to be there more. And so never really thought about it from that perspective, which is awesome to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we all had our own individual relationship with Pops, and it looked different in 3 different ways. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but I would say stuff like, that's not fucking fair. Life's not fair, right? And then, you know, he would say, you know, I don't treat you 3 even, but I'll always treat you equal. You know? It's like, I don't treat you even, but I'll always treat you equal.
What do you think he meant by that?
I mean, we're 3 different personalities, you know? And so I think, you know, whether the investment was time, whether an investment was, you know, financial, whatever the investment was, he did his best to make sure that we were equal. We were all on the same level. But that same level, getting to that same level looked different in energy and time.
Yeah, that's interesting. He did his best. That's the even. And the best, how he showed up, meeting us where we were. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, because of our relationship, I feel like Dad could be more vulnerable with me, right? I feel like, because I would tell him multiple times, and man, I try not to feel awful about it, but like, have either one of you guys, like, on a not a regular basis, but I can count probably on both hands, like, times I remember looking at him and being like, you realize that I fucking hate you. Like, I hate you.
Yeah, 0?
Yeah. Probably 0 for you.
I never even thought it.
Yeah. Well, I not only thought it, but I said it, right? And so, look, somebody who says they hate you, like, what do you have to lose? Like, I'll be as fucking vulnerable. Like, I don't have anything to lose with this guy. But to you and you, it's like, I can't let him down. I can't let that guy down. It's my best friend. It's my baby boy. I can't let that guy down. But me, it's like, I've already fucking let this kid down. Like, he's already let me know that. So like I remember a moment like it was the moment that he realized mom was gonna die. Like he came. I went. You know, we were kind of taking shifts. You know, and this kind of full circle to the question you asked me about what my recollection of mom's passing, and you know, I feel like I was there a lot, and then I'd go home and go on a little bender and clean myself up and go back up there, you know, for maybe a day, maybe 36 hours, and then go back home, get some relief, clean up, go back up, you know. And I remember I'd been up there for like 2 days straight, and Dad's like, "You need to go home. Like you slept the last 2 nights here. Like Derek, Dusty, and I got this. Like you go home." And I was like, "Oh, all right." He's like, "Well, we'll call you if anything happens. You're the first person we're calling." And rewind just a little bit, like maybe it was the night before I spent 2 nights there. Like I went home to take a nap, and I was the only one home, and Dad gets home, and he kind of like knocks on the door, and it was probably like 7 o'clock at night, and I was sleeping, and he just knocks on the door, and he just opens up, you know, "You awake?" "I am now, asshole." Yeah. And he's like, "I come in," and yeah, I just kind of remember I was in our old room, you know, with the weird, you know, turn, and I just remember kind of his silhouette walking through the door, and you know, I sit up on the bed and I stand up. I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "Just got back from the hospital." It's like, "Yeah, how are things?" And he just kind of looks at me and shook his head. It's like, "She's gonna die." And I was like, "Yeah, come here, man." And just gave him a big hug, and he just fucking broke down. Just lost it. Just lost it. "I can't believe it's happening. Why is this happening? Why is it her? She's the best of us." You know, it's like because he couldn't do that with you two because he's like, I'm Bob, you know, but he could with me because he's like, this kid already fucking hates me.
Yeah.
You know, knowing by that point in time, right? By that point in time, like, you know, that was a 27-year-old version of Jake, not the 18-year-old version telling him that you know, I hate, you know, we had an interesting, you know, relationship once I moved back home. You know, when I used to tell people, yeah, I moved back home because my mom got sick. You know, and it's like I moved back home because I was fucking broke and I couldn't manage money and I drank a ton and ate a ton, and it's really easy to go back home. You know, when mom, you know, because I was living with JD and those guys, and you know, say, hey dudes, you know, I gotta go help my dad take care of my mom. You know, it sounds really altruistic, but
even the internal dialogue that you think Dad had, like. Again, I think that ability to be vulnerable is probably right, but he knew you didn't hate him,
right? No,
it's said by again, just
right.
making sure that like the color commentary of like kids say stupid shit
all the time,
you know, and like I think the vulnerability is probably spot on, but like each one of us had different relationships, as most kids and parents and siblings and parents and families have.
Yeah, and you know, the last 3 years of mom's life, you know, him and I shared a lot of, you know, just being in that house, you know, living, you know, with a sick mom and having to, you know, kind of make sure, you know, two guys who like to have a drink, you know, let's make sure we don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
You know, not saying that out loud, but obviously, you know, making sure that, you know, one of us was fucking trying to do the right thing. And, you know, that, you know, formed that bond to, you know, hey, like we've gone through this journey together. And like, this is like, I'm coming to realization. It's like, because I believe mom and dad both to the end. It's like, they thought they were like, mom probably a little bit less than dad, but I think they're like, oh, I still can beat this, you know? I mean, like, until the very end for Dad, it's like, I still think he's like, we're going to figure this fucking out. You know, I'm not quitting, you know, I can figure this out. You know, and that's when like having the conversation the night before, the night he did pass, like earlier in that evening, like, you know, talking him into getting hospice care.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, that was once I talked him into that, that was it. Like he didn't obviously make it to hospice, but that was like, him like, okay, like now I can, you know, I just gave up. Now I can leave in peace. But he was fighting to the end, you know. But you know, it's kind of interesting just to be a part of hospice now, and then understanding, you know, their kind of old school mentality. Like hospice means you quit and give up, you know. Because I remember, you know, Mom got pissed at Carrie and Lori for going and looking at a hospice house, you know, like pissed, you know, just because there's just that was their warp dynamic. But so having that experience with Dad, and then I spent the next 2 nights at the hospital, and then, you know, on Dad's birthday, you guys stayed. I guess, yeah, you guys stayed the night at the hospital because I think I was there for a little bit, and then like I think, you know, Dad's like, I'm not celebrating my birthday, like we're not doing anything, you know, and you three and Darcy spent the night there, and then I went home and I was like, whew. I mean, I guess I can laugh at it now, but it used to cause me. I mean, I did a lot of drinking over this, but, you know, what I did is I went and bought a case of wine, 12 bottles of wine, you know, and drank 9 of them at Mom and Dad's house.
Jesus.
And, yeah, I mean, I probably went home about 7 and probably drank till about 3.
God, that's probably shitty wine, too.
I think it was, you know, it was probably. I mean, it wasn't Night Train, but, you know, I think I got a you know, a deal. It's probably like $15 bottle of wine, you know.
$15.
But I just
vintage.
I remember waking up that next morning, like out of a blackout, and looking at my phone and there being 11 missed calls, and being like, oh, fuck. And then calling Dad, and Dad's like, you get your fucking ass here now. And I just remember like going 100 miles an hour to the hospital and getting there, and, you know, it was, you know, too late, clearly. But having to live with that, right? It's like, what a great excuse to drink, you know? Like, oh man, what a fucking letdown. Of course I was drinking, you know, but that's the way it was supposed to be, you know? I wasn't supposed to be there. I was supposed to be, you know, I was supposed to be a great example of an alcoholic for me to see that today.
Do you think you not being there for Mom drove a bigger commitment to ensuring that you were always there for Dad? You know, you kind of start putting the puzzle pieces together of like, obviously you're going to show up for your dad, but you weren't at that moment. So did you have that maybe in your subconscious of like, I need to make sure I'm showing up?
To some level, yeah. Now that I think about that, I haven't really pondered it. Yeah, I mean, because there's no way I could have done that twice. I mean, I don't think I would have survived that. But that probably could have been a driver of why I was at that hospital so much. That, you know, I wasn't here for Mom when she passed, so there's no chance I'm not going to be here for Dad.
Mm-hmm. Were you there when Dad died?
Yeah, I
mean, was he still alive when you got there?
Yeah, he was. I was in Milwaukee.
I knew you flew back, but I didn't know if you made it back.
I told you, I probably told both you guys, like, hey, if it's that time, call me. I'll be on the next flight. Landed, I don't know, Uber or rental car to KU Med. Walk in, hold Dad's hand. Hey, Dad, I'm here. Dead.
I remember it a little differently.
That's how I remember it.
I remember you climbing up in the bed, and I remember seeing a tear go down Dad's eye. I remember you grabbing his hand and then you crawling up into the hospital bed. Pretty vividly. And then I remember, like, with his eyes closed, I remember a tear running down his face.
That's why I always appreciate, hey, what happened?
Yeah.
Because it is, again, the perspective, and that's where it sucks that they're not here to ask them questions, or even, dad's family to ask questions about certain things, and you know, but like, I love being able to, like, that's one thing about having Jake 2 years older than me is like, what do you remember about this? And then I can kind of compare it to mine and put a piece here, a piece there.
Fill in the blanks.
Yeah. So, you saying that paints a picture for me that, okay, I can put myself there. I do remember just thinking, like, once he passed, like, he knew I got there.
Yep.
And like that meant the world, to me, of, wow, he held on enough.
Yeah, man, because I still struggle with that every day that I didn't make it down there in time.
You weren't supposed to, man.
I guess that's the way you got to look at it, but still tough.
It is, but
because I remember when I left the hospital the night before, they're like, I think the doctor said, I don't know if we had already decided if we're going to do hospice then or not, but I think I pulled the doctor aside and, like, realistically, how much time do we have? And he's like, probably 10 days, 7 to 10 days. And then remember the next morning getting that call. I'm like, what do you mean I need to get down there right now? So here I'm taking my time and lollygagging around and driving down there, and I get down there and he's gone. And I'm like, still haunts me to this day.
That's so interesting, though, Dust, that, like, you would have gotten a message of 10 days, and then I got the message of get the fuck home,
Yeah. And I don't...
Yeah. Well,
I think if they knew it was, I don't think the option of hospice would even have been on the table if they knew it was going to be 10 hours.
Well,
not 10
days.
I guess
that was I was flexible enough in a schedule of, like, if he's going to hospice, okay, I can get home and be home for whatever time. So that kind of could make sense too.
Yeah, that was. I don't want to.
That just still.
I don't want to get too weird into the story, but, like, I there was a moment that haunted me for a long time within that structure. When I had to talk him into going to hospice, because John Caton pulled me out into the hallways, like, he's not going to listen to anybody but you. I'm like, don't fucking put that on me, man. Like, don't fucking put that on me. He's like, I'm not putting anything on you, but, like, he's not going to listen to me. He's not going to listen to anybody except you. And the hospice is the best for him. And we got a bed for him at the hospice house. So, like, in not so many words, like, you need to convince him to do this. And before I even had that conversation, like, I remember the doctor coming in, and which is so strange that that's the message that you got, but it's irrelevant really at this point. But it's like,
and who knows? They could have said 10 hours, and I heard 10 days.
Right.
But I don't think that was the case. To this day, I'm like, still don't understand how.
And the truth is, nobody knows, right? Nobody knows.
It ended up being that short of a time frame.
Yeah. But for whatever reason, like, you just weren't supposed to be there, and I can't help, that's something that you have to.
When you hear that, like, you weren't supposed to be there, do you take comfort in that? Like, how does that resonate with you?
I don't take it anyway, I guess. I just, if that's, I still wish I would have been there.
Yeah.
It still haunts me to this day. But, I don't.
I guess that's why I asked the question, because I ask, hey, you weren't supposed to be there. how does that resonate with you? And then in that same sentence, you say it still haunts me. I guess that's where if I wasn't supposed to be there, and again, I guess that goes back to some of the conversations we were having about like belief in, belief structure.
Right.
If God or whatever kind of sets a path, or hey, you weren't supposed to be there because of what happens after. It's reality. It's perfect in that reality, and imperfect's probably a tough word to hear, but if you're not supposed to be there, is there any release of it haunting you?
There is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think it goes back to what we just talked about.
Good.
With,
Okay.
good.
Good. Yeah.
It's not like, look, these things, like, it's not like we're going to walk out here and like, you're just going to be, you're good, man.
Yeah.
You're good. It's
No,
like,
I think
totally.
it'll still upset me that I wasn't there.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I don't think you live in a world where it won't upset you. Like, just like it still upsets me that I was drinking 9 bottles of wine and couldn't answer the phone. And on the first call where I could have made it, like, the first call comes in when Dad calls me, like, maybe I get to the hospital and maybe, but it's like, there's no chance that guy was waking up.
Mm-hmm. I think if we would have had this, you had asked me that question before we even walked in here, and you said you weren't supposed to be there, I would have said bullshit. You should have been
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then listening to Jake and how having the discussion about how he needed to be there for at the hospital with Dad, that kind of brings it full circle. And
there's a little relief in it.
I mean,
for you.
Yeah.
And it's like that's something.
Well, you could see a full picture.
Yeah.
So I'll still be upset about it.
Sure.
That'll never go away.
Just
But
like we'll never stop
puts
missing
it in a little
them.
bit more perspective that there was a reason that Jake needed to spend the time at the hospital and I didn't, and there was a reason you two needed to be
Right. There's a reason
there
why
when he died and I didn't.
for Mom, you guys were there and I wasn't. For what? Like, and it's like, here's the thing: is like, there's a good chance that we won't ever understand why.
Yeah.
Right? We don't, and that's why I think why is like the worst question ever. It's more like, how come? Or, like why is like, I stop asking that question anymore.
Well, I still think back to when Mom died, and I'm sure both of you know the story about how she waited for McCroskey was out of town or on vacation. Mm-hmm. And was not there with her the last couple of days, or I don't know when the last time he saw her. And as soon as he walks into the hospital room and like in this loud voice, "Hi, Debbie, Dr. Bogorowski, I'm here," or whatever, and 5 seconds later, she's gone.
Yeah.
It's just, that's crazy to me that she held on.
Oh,
And
it's crazy to me.
And I don't know if that's right or not. That was just timing, but I tell people that story that it's like,
I'm sure
she wanted him to be there, that he had gone through this journey with her, and
she needed,
that was crazy.
She needed a voice of authority, and that's what Dr. McCroskey was to her, to say, to say, it's okay.
"Hi, Debbie, Dr. McCroskey's here. You can go now."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she needed that,
Is that what he said?
It was something along
There was
those
something
lines.
along those lines.
I know he said.
He confirmed for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's good now, or you've
done your best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what the words were, but it was something to that effect.
Yeah. No. I
wasn't there.
And it was loud enough. I mean, it was loud. It was like, it's this guy yelling.
Yeah. I remember.
And
I remember now.
It was definitely less than 60 seconds after he walked in and said that she was gone.
Yeah, I was holding her hand. One of them.
I was holding the other one.
Yeah. But I
well, that's why I wasn't supposed to be there, showing her 2 hands. Yeah.
There you go. But yeah, I remember the life leaving her, and she had these big veins on her hands, those those bony hands, and I it's almost like the blood stopped flowing through them, and like you could just feel it. You could just Those bony little hands. Those big veins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big blue veins on the back of her hands.
Well,
Crazy stuff that how things happen and how things work out.
yeah. I don't know how long we've gone here. Probably need to land the plane here in a little bit. Like I said, I didn't even think.
I feel like we're just getting started.
Well, I mean, there are some things like, I have on here, we all had 3 different experiences. Like I'm curious what you're like for 8 years, you got mom and dad to yourself.
Yeah.
And what that was like,
Awesome.
until you came along, asshole.
I mean, you've heard some of the stories. I'd go to bars in Lawrence with them and get passed around and, Shawnee Mission Park and hang out. I mean, totally different, and I don't know if environment is the right word, but to what would happen now.
Yeah.
Well, and you got.
I mean, how often do you go to Johnny's or whatever and see, this baby just hanging out with, and probably wasn't the only time. I mean, that probably happened multiple times. I mean, I was, part of their group. I mean, they were what, 20 and 19?
Yeah. Something you kind of grew up with them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Babies.
I mean, that shaped a lot of my, the way I grew up and some of the things that I...
Is it bad that I don't think it's bad for babies in a bar? Like, I don't...
And especially now, no smoking, but...
There you go. Okay. Okay, yeah.
Dusty's 2 inches shorter than us.
Again,
he got that secondhand smoke.
Different time, for sure.
Or you hear the story of whoever it was that...
we just heard it the other day.
Was that Kevin who said that?
No. I remember. How it's... Was it
Might have been
Halloween?
Rick.
Kevin or Rick.
Halloween, and they go to a costume party at someone's house and leave me in the car.
Sleeping.
Because you were sleeping. And then I
Makes sense.
woke up and
Everyone's
walk
partying.
up, knock on the door, and I'm like, Bob and Debbie here? Or?
Do you remember that at all?
No. Mm-mm.
What's the earliest memory?
I mean, I remember going to places with them, Shawnee Mission Park, people's houses. Not necessarily the bar, the Johnny's story, but yeah, I mean, got to spend a lot of time with them. And I mean, one of the things you'd written on there was, did I want brothers
sibling?
or whatever? And I don't know that I ever, I asked they asked me and I said no. And then they're like, well, too late. So I'm like, so, okay, well.
Wrong answer.
Yeah.
Wrong answer.
So, I would have been 7 when you were, when
They
told you?
Mom was pregnant.
Yeah. And I think I don't remember exactly how they told me. I think Lori, there's that strip, that cartoon.
The cartoon strip. Yeah.
And I think it was.
Dusty Gets a Brother.
Yeah.
I still have that.
Yeah, that is somewhere.
Yeah, it's in.
I think I might have a copy too.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. It's pretty awesome. for me. I don't know about you, man.
No, but yeah, I know for the longest time I didn't have to share anything, but I think I was old enough at that time that, a lot of times you'll hear people say, "Oh, I didn't want to share their time with someone," and I think it was different because I was a little older, so yeah, I don't. But
well, I mean,
glad that
it also explains why
had
you and Dad were so close.
Mm-hmm.
For 8 years, you guys were best of buds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. I remember stories. I mean, I clearly didn't want a younger brother.
Still don't.
I remember Grandma Bev would tell me a story that I had this little workbench. Have you heard this?
Mm-mm.
I had this little play school workbench. You hammer, little plastic hammer, and square goes in square, you hammer it down. And Derek, you were crawling, so I must have been probably somewhere between 2 and 3, and Mom is in our old house, and Mom was looking down at the stairs from and someone's like, "Oh, look, they're playing so well together," and I was just hugging Derek or something, and then as soon as they looked away, I start hammering Derek with this hammer, and Grandma Bev walked up from the basement It's like, stop it. And mom, and I think it was probably Maxine, like, whoa, what's he doing? It's like every time you guys would look away, he'd start hitting Derek, and then you look, and he would just go back to playing.
Smart.
I remember that.
So, what about you? I mean, what was it like? You had them to yourself basically for a couple years. After I left, you had the house to yourself. Just
Yeah. It was also really nice having a brother older than you, because I had protection. Like you didn't have my back when he was hitting me with the hammer, but like, if we were fighting and and you were home, I could lock myself in the bathroom long enough that you could kind of intervene. So I have memories of that.
Yeah.
But when you left, Jake, I mean, I was my junior year of high school, so I had seen everything. Compared to you, I was a rule follower. Like, I knew the ins and outs because, again, there was a path laid forward of what not to do.
Or at least how you don't want to be.
Or no, but it was really what not to do. Because
how not to get caught.
I think that so much of who you were shaped who I was at the time. So it wasn't how not to be. It was what not to do while still being. You were fucking super cool. You were the coolest guy, all-American goalkeeper, successful with the opposite sex, had great friends. Like, shit. Yeah, I'm Jake Gutierrez's little brother. I could go to any, high school. Obviously, I had my own friend network, but that path was a great one to be on. I mean, again, even being the youngest of, even at Miege or teachers that, we taught Dusty way back in the day. And like, so much of it was the path that Dusty paved, because mom and dad got a chance to do it a second and third time. But whether it was soccer, sports, schools, parenting, showing up, for them, what to do, what not to do. I mean, you went to JUCO, played soccer, Avila played soccer, paved we're super early, and it's mind-blowing hearing the youth soccer scene in Kansas City, but you were on the forefront of club soccer. I mean, probably one of the first clubs in existence in Kansas City. And then, so for me, Jake, to answer your question, long-winded as I typically am, it was great because they were finally a little bit looser, and they had a son in college playing college soccer 7 hours away, and I had built at least enough trust that they would leave. So it was awesome being a high school junior, and like, we're going to go see Jake play at Western. I'm good. I got soccer games this weekend. So, yeah. And again, mom and dad were great. Super overprotective, I would say. Mom, just in general. But no, it was good to be the only child for a couple of years. But I had all their focus and all their expertise by then. All my friends' parents were getting, tips from mom and dad, really from mom. But I'm so grateful. I mean, again, ending up where I did at Marquette, and, having the opportunities that were provided, I have a lot of gratitude for that.
Yeah. I guess maybe, as we reflect on Bob and Deb, maybe this is a way we can start circling back around and wrapping this up. But so we'll start with you, Dusty. Like, and if you need some time to think about this, I'm just off the cuff in it, like, as I think about it. So if you had one question right now that you could ask mom and dad individually or collectively, what do you think that question would be?
Wow, that's tough. God, I don't know that I would have a question for them. I would just tell them thanks.
Yeah, I like that.
Thanks for, everything they did for me and the upbringing that they gave me, the advice that I still use to this day. I think it would just be more, I can't thank you enough for everything you did. They're the ones that taught me, and I'll never forget that, one piece of advice they gave me was just don't be afraid of failing. In anything you do. And I still use that to this day with work and with raising my kids, and that's how a lot of times you learn the most about yourself is through failure.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, in the context, when was that distilled onto you? Of, hey, don't be afraid to fail. Was it were they talking to you about a job or soccer or parenting? When was
the
that?
first time that I can actually, there were multiple reminders throughout my life, but I think the first time I actually remember that is, to not be scared and don't worry about if you fail or whatever, is when soccer at Miege, when I never really played goalie, It's same as you do when, all other little kids, someone will play a half here and you'll.
Sure.
But I never really consistently played, and I think I don't know if it was tryouts or when, but, some of the coaches said, hey, has anyone ever played goalie or want to play goalie? And I'm like, I played every once in a while, and they're like, all right, get in there. And at that time I didn't know. I'm like, I'll just
Stop the ball.
Yeah, well, I'm just this isn't going to be long term. This is just
Right.
This is just going to be for today or whatever. And as we got more and more into it, I expressed that I was not really wanting to do that. I was scared to do that. That I'd never really done that. I don't know if I see myself being a goalie full time. And I remember but one or both of them said, "Give it a shot, see what happens."
That's wild.
Don't be afraid to.
'Cause
What's the worst that can happen?
You're a good field player too, but the fact that they said that, I mean,
That's
incredible.
like, what's the worst that can happen? Just give it a shot, try it. If you fail, so what? Don't be afraid. You never know what will happen, and I still use that throughout everything. A lot of different aspects of my life.
Wow. I mean,
starting new jobs, going into something that you've never done before, or certain ways you parent differently now than I did then, and raising the kids, and so. Back to your original question, I don't know that I need anything answered from them.
Yeah.
More just be, thank you for everything you've done and did for me and shaped me into the man I am today.
Yeah. I mean, without that advice, there's zero chance I would have been a goalkeeper. I mean, because, look, you were 8 years older and you were you're cool, man. I wanted to be you, whether you're a goalie, whether it's to the point in time where you had to put a lock on your door and I had to figure out how to break into your door and steal your music. And, it wasn't YouTube back in the days, but there was Steven Seagal movies. So I get a credit card out and have to, jimmy your door open with a credit card so I could steal your tapes and then your CDs. And, it's funny how a decision like that vibrates through and impacts, their words of wisdom to you, and you're implementing it through action. How, to his point, how it shaped me, and then it shaped him, right? So it's their words of wisdom to you. shaped your decision. You weren't afraid to fail to be a goalkeeper, and me idolizing you and just wanting to like, oh, he's a goalie. That's why I'm a big goalie. I'm gonna steal your green Royce shirt. Like, I'm gonna steal your your Miola gloves. You got Copas. I want Copas. You know, and then transfers. You know, right.
Yeah, and who knows if I would have even been able to play college soccer as a field player.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think about how that transformed me, and got 4 years of college pretty much paid for, and
I mean, it transformed all of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that decision, like, I mean, think about what that decision, again, being the oldest and being the pace setter, or, you know, setting the path. Shit, you don't do that out of fear, or you don't get that message from mom and dad. I mean, shit. All of our lives are completely different.
totally.
Yeah. Wild. Did you? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we've ever really talked. I mean, you're the only one of us that played high school baseball. Really. I mean, I played my freshman year, but then, like, it was summer ball. But did you ever have any thoughts of trying to play baseball at another level, or did you have any opportunities? Or
I had an opportunity at JUCO.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, but I couldn't do both,
Right.
and there was no doubt that if I had to pick one, that soccer was the one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had talked to the coaches at JUCO about playing baseball, and whether that would have amounted to anything, no one will ever know. But
Right.
there wasn't really the opportunity to do both at that time. So
I kind of remember that, and that's the only reason I asked.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've ever had this conversation. But
No,
I just kind
I
of
was unaware.
in the back of my mind. I just remember that there's being some kind of possible opportunity there. That's the only reason why I follow up with that.
And the landscape now is so much different, even from when I graduated high school to when you guys did. I mean, you guys were making tapes and sending them to colleges.
Yeah.
I never did anything like that.
Yeah.
There really wasn't.
I remember sending like over 60 faxes,
Yeah,
fax machine. Yeah, for different letters to the coaches all across the country.
I think the only Division I offer that I had was like UAB.
Really?
But it wasn't even a full ride, and
Right.
you know, I don't know if I wanted
Blazers.
even considered doing that.
funny.
Moving away.
It's funny, they were in Conference USA,
Yeah.
and we played them every year. They were great. They were top 25.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I'm thankful, because I was kind of honestly, like, one of the reasons I obviously Western was great for me, and loved my time there, but also it's like, you know, it was 7 hours away, and you know, I think I had 7 different offers that were full rides, and I wanted to go to South Carolina, and they offered me a half scholarship, and I was like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna go be a Gamecock. And Mom's like, nope, you're not. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you will choose from one of these 7 schools. I said, are you fucking kidding me?
Really?
Yeah. She goes, you have 7 full ride offers. You will choose one of these 7 schools.
Do you remember the 7 schools?
UMKC, Rockhurst, Miami of Ohio, Winthrop, Army up at West Point, Western Illinois. I mean, is that 6? I can't remember. I think there was one other school, a small school. I don't think it was a D1 school. I think it was. I can't. It's escaping me.
Yeah.
Where'd Tom Crean coach before Marquette? Yeah, I think maybe I'm thinking of Winthrop, but
Put me on blast.
yeah, sorry. So what about you? Would you have a question for Mom and Dad?
No, I mean, again, being the youngest, being the guy who goes second or third. No, I mean, I thought about it when you asked that to Dusty, like if it's posed to me. I think there's moments in time where I wish I could ask them that, but if there's like, this hypothetical world we're living in, no, I wouldn't probably ask them anything. I would want to show them something. I mean, you have, Hannah and Ellie who they didn't get to meet. It would be, come watch Gavin play basketball, or
Yeah, totally.
come spend one day in my home. And it's just interesting, that's what it would be. No doubt. It'd just be like, hey, can I get an hour? Can I get 15 minutes? Like, yeah, I mean, that's what it would be. It would just
Introduce them to someone.
Just show them, and again, the relationships we all had were so different. Like mom, again, me choosing Marquette was, we had like Steve Adlard, who's the head coach. He did such a great job, and it just made so much sense. And Martha Banning went to Marquette. Yeah. There was all this connection to Milwaukee. But yeah, I remember mom kind of pressing me a little bit, and like, it's a typical like mother. What are you gonna do with your life? Like what's your plan? And I like straight up gave her a full plan. Like, I'm gonna go study abroad. I'm gonna keep playing soccer. I'm gonna get into sports marketing. I'm gonna do this. And she kind of was like, okay, like, and like that played out. So it's like, yeah, I think I just want to spend some time, like,
yeah,
share.
I get that. Also, mom's probably like, yeah, you're not going to South Carolina and you're going to take a full ride, because if you start taking student debt, like, there's probably a good chance you are not going to make it out of college.
Yeah. Well, close, but not too, like she probably, she put the schools in front of you and probably pulled UMKC, Rockhurst, and Western probably a little closer just based on proximity, so they could see you. Because, I mean, that was one thing that was really important to mom, and dad, but, like, she showed up. She always would show up. And, she was there, too. I mean, me more so than you guys, just based on playing in the field. She yelled at a lot of your teammates. Yeah, like, that video was classic at Avila. But she showed up, and like that, so again, I talked earlier about her and dad getting out to Western a lot, but I mean, the miles they'd put on their cars to show up, and they showed up for other kids too. Like I've had parents come up, and like to even, significant others, and being like, oh my God, if I could tell you how much Debbie meant to our son and us, she made a massive impact, and she showed up. She'd always show up.
Yeah, impact, right? I think that when I think about mom, and I think about how special of a person she was, I think about a very unique quality, especially in this day and age. Because look, my memory is awesome. I'm very proud of my memory, but there are...
Which is crazy.
Yeah, right?
How do you have a better memory than me? It's nuts, dude.
But
your memory is great.
But there are for sure blurry moments, and kind of things that get woven together. Like I would say that, like, mom and dad's funeral and visitation are one, like, those things kind of, for me, one, they're traumatic events, and two, I am fairly confident there was I was inebriated partially through a large period of that time. But where I was going with that is, like, how many people showed up to mom's visitation, because that quality that she had, that I do my best to emulate, that I'll I can only try, because I'll never be able to emulate fully what she could do, is that, and it's like why I think like all of my friends just love Mom, Cop and Gentile and Herding and all those guys. They just love Mom. Oh, your mom's the best, your mom's the best. And it's like, no, she's the fucking worst. Mm-hmm. She could track me down to any party and all around town, like, and there's no internet and there's no cell phones, and she shows up at the door. Send Jake out or I'm calling the police. But the ability that she would have to, one, listen, and then to make that person feel heard and feel special by those things, is why, like, I look at, like, her visitation. Like, I don't know if I've been to a funeral of anybody I know that like, they had to stop the line because there's so many people, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And like, what a unique ability to, listen to somebody and make them feel heard. Mm-hmm. And then, like, that blows my mind. And it's something that I value and try to work on, be a good listener, listen twice, talk once. But also I'm curious just to hear your guys, because I have my story, but at Mom's visitation, like, do you remember very much of it? Like, do you remember me showing up late?
Mm-mm. Nope.
Yeah. I mean, neither one of you guys were very happy with me. But I was about 20, 25 minutes late. And I remember you being like, dude, there were fucking people going through the line that were here for you. Where the fuck have you been? Mm-hmm. It's like, I'd go get a haircut, man. To get some new sunglasses.
I remember the sunglasses a little bit. But no, I don't. I mean,
I'm surprised that I don't.
I wish. I mean, everyone who spoke at their, I think Anna spoke at
Maxine.
Mom's, Max. Like, I kind of wish doing it over, I wish I would have just gotten up and said something.
Sure. No,
like,
yeah.
I mean, it's just something that, like, oh God, that's your chance.
Yeah, but I mean, that's
not our role, I guess, as far as roles go. Like, hey, here's the plan. Here's who sets.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Mom wanted us speaking at it, or else we would.
Oh yeah, we didn't. I mean,
like, she planned that whole thing.
Yeah, I don't think about it a lot, but like,
I would have made it like 10 words, and then
that's what I like.
Bubbly mess. I mean,
I admire people who have the ability to do that. Admire them greatly, because I know, like, that at that point in time where I was in my life, today where I am, it's not even worth thinking about, because that's not I'm not where I am right now. Then it's.
I think about that at Dad's more than Mom's.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was sitting in front of the computer for, I think we all probably did, for their obituaries, so I think that's probably our way of making sure that the right things are said.
Yeah, I don't think I had a piece in it either.
Yeah,
I was kind of sitting things out.
Yeah,
for whatever reason, but
going back to what we said earlier, you weren't supposed to.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I do have peace with that all. But I just think it's hilarious that I showed up late to Mom's
I do not remember that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
there's a lot of that I just want to forget about.
Yeah, I get that. Well, any other closing comments before we wrap this up?
I mean, sure. Like, a lot of peace in having the opportunity to sit around and talk. And, I'm excited for, where the podcast will go, because I've had the opportunity to live in the closest proximity, some of it, where, there's so much more depth different pieces that, I'm excited to explore. And I'm excited for the podcast to explore, because, this was an awesome kickoff to talk about who shaped us all and who gave us our names, and, the path and the journey that you've been on and that we've been a part of. So I'm excited for where the podcast goes. I love that we had the opportunity to sit here and kick it off and start something that we're all thrilled and excited for. So, here's to a long journey ahead, and I'm excited to listen and be a part of it through the podcast, through a set of earphones or in my car. So be great.
Man, I don't know that I could have said it any better. Just proud of you. Excited to see where this podcast goes, and looking forward to hearing more about it. Just honored that you would bring us in on the first episode to kind of kick it off. Excited to know that there are people out there that will listen to you and be better, for what you have to say and what you have to share with them. The three of us getting together and talking like this, long overdue.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Probably should have done it as a healing process a long time ago.
Yeah.
But better late than never. So
right. And more to come.
Yeah, looking forward to
more to come. For sure.
Forward to doing it.
Get some sponsors that
more often.
Pay for flights.
We can do that. You listening? Airlines?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, having you guys on was an absolute no-brainer. I knew I was going to eventually launch a podcast months, if not years ago. And this was always the plan. And, this was always the plan. And it's awesome when we can think things out in life, come up with an idea, and then slowly work our way through that idea, and then have it come to fruition. Like, that's life. Mm-hmm. Like the power that we have that's a choice. And so our thoughts have so much power in them, so we need to be vigilant of them, because this is what they can create, right? Helping, healing people, healing ourselves, healing each other, by the power of our thought. And I say this all the time, that there is nothing that I know of more powerful in this universe than a thought. Like, everything that we see around us was first a thought. Everything that exists in our life today was first a thought, good and bad. And so it's like, for me, like, part of my, daily process is to the best of my ability, be vigilant with my thinking. So there's going to be a lot of good that hopefully comes from this podcast. There's a lot to me other than what we've sat here and talked about in my story. We saw pictures of it, and we really talked a lot about the disease of alcoholism and addiction here. But let's roll it out real quick for the listening audience for the future. Because my message is that you can be your own hero, because the reality is that nobody was going to do this for me, right? I had to do this for Jake, and I had to want to do it for Jake. And fortunately, I like, the worst thing and the best thing is that it takes, for me, I'm like you mentioned, like my hard-headedness, that my Debbie in me, right? It takes death to persuade me to do something. Not today, luckily, right? I can slow that train up and stop it before it gets to that. But the biggest changes in my life, it was like, you're going to have to change or you're going to die, right? Whether it be my drinking and drug using, whether it be, we'll get into a lot of this podcast will be around health and wellness, like we mentioned before, but like, I've completely reversed type 2 diabetes. Like I had a A1C of 14.3, which is normal is 5. So, I was out of control with my diabetes. I didn't just kind of have diabetes. Like my pancreas, as my doctor told me, was dead. You have a dead pancreas. It amazes me that you're upright and conscious right now. You should be in the corner sleeping with the A1C that you have. So I have an appreciation for what my body had to endure with a sick mind. And my amends to my body is to take the best care possible of this body because it's not mine. God put me here inside it. And, like I'm not this hand I'm looking at, right? I'm what's behind looking at this hand. Like that's who I am. And sure, that might be a little bit out there. And I know we touched the fringes of the supernatural a little bit with my experience, but like literally that's the fringes. That's just normal for me in these days. Like, and I'm careful with who I share that with and how it's received because it's my reality. And like I said at the beginning, I'm not going to preach. I'm not going to say, hey, if you want to say that I'm full of shit, awesome, right? I'm out of the business of caring what people think about me. Like I used to be obsessed with that. I used to be so concerned of what others thought of me that I acted outside of who I was just because I wanted you to think I was this, and that's not really who I was. The reality was that I didn't even really know who I was. But as I draw us back in, like we'll touch about me reversing type 2 diabetes. Any guy, right, that has gone up to 374 pounds and gone over 350 3 different times, meaning I got to 350 and above and then lost weight and went under 300 and got to like 275 and then went back over 350 and then lost weight and got back down to 280 and then went back up to 374. Anybody who likes to do that, or anybody who does that, nobody likes to do that, but anybody who does that likes to eat. And I like to eat. And so I have, what level, I've done work outside of, my recovery with, I have some type of eating disorder. I have an unhealthy relationship with food. And I think that is a massive problem in this society. Mm-hmm. I would eat because that would make me feel better sometimes, so whether it be an eating disorder, whether it be, like I'm so imperfect at opposite sex relations. I've fucked them all up, right? I'm trying to do better with that today. We'll dive into, romantic relationships. We'll dive into, family relationships. So, but most importantly, my message is that none of those relationships matter if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself, right? Because, I can't love you if I don't love me first. And I learned that the hard way, right? Because I didn't love me for a long time. And I thought I loved other people. And how could that possibly be true, right? So the show will be learning, not me sharing how I learned to love myself, me sharing how I learned to love my body, me sharing how I learned to love my soul, me learning how to get connected to something greater than me. I call that thing God just because I haven't found a shorter word. But when I say the word God, I'm not talking about a religious God. I'm talking about a God individual to me, a God that keeps me sober, a God that keeps me safe, right? I say today that, like, it's not my job to take care of Jake anymore, right? That's not my job. My job, right, is to do God's work because it's God's job to take care of Jake. That's God's job. My job is to do his work. And this show is a part of doing God's work. So I look forward to many more episodes, many more times behind this microphone, many more times of being just Jake. So thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I look forward to some more conversations like this on and off the mic. And so I'll leave you with, one thought. And that thought is change your thinking and change your life. Good night now.